Hey, vinyl community, Elliot here, Lazy Dogs Records, and I have been doing a end of the month look at the records I've picked up each month lately, and they tend to run a little long, and I think that discourages views. I'd love people to see, what I got recently, so I'm gonna try to make this a little quicker, do it a little earlier in the month, and then at the beginning of November, maybe I'll do another look at what I got since then. What are we listening to first of all? Stanley Brothers Folk Concert, it's called. And this is on Star Day, typical of the mid 60s. They made sure they used the word folk because they were trying to appeal to the folk music listeners, and not just the traditional country folk that were listening to bluegrass, which hadn't really even gotten, that name really wasn't that well established. It was there, but not quite as well defined in the very early 60s. So you see the word folk and concert on a lot of bluegrass albums then from labels like Star Day, as they were trying to get the message across. Hey, this is something you're looking for. Pick this one up. Okay, so there's the beautiful banjo of Mr. Ralph Stanley on that, and lead vocals from Carter. Okay, and it's my birthday a few days ago, so I treated myself by going back and getting some new albums. Only one of them has come in, but new albums from the great Tedeschi Trucks Band, one of my favorite bands out there today. And I have most of these on CD, but I wanted maybe have all of them on CD. I want to go back and get the ones I didn't have on vinyl. And of course, there's their first one. That one has come in, and this is Revelator, their first album from, I don't know, 2011 maybe, something like that. Was it that? Might not even been that far back. But of course, Susan Tedeschi and Derek Trucks. I like the back cover as well. I was glad to pick this one up. A lot of these albums are going for a lot of money, so you're not going to get these cheap. Usually they're 2-record sets when they do them on vinyl, and that one is a 2-record set. Okay, another new album I got recently is Green Sky Bluegrass, and that is an ugly cover. The album is called All for Money. It's kind of hard to read there, but All for Money. And the back cover is just as boring as the front cover. There they are. But for the boredom, all the boredom of the album cover, the jacket, this is some really good bluegrass in the jamgrass, newgrass subgenre of bluegrass. It's nothing traditional about this album or this music, but it is definitely a part of the overall umbrella of bluegrass, but in the jamgrass variety, I would say. Really good. Enjoyed listening to this one. They're from Michigan, if I'm not mistaken. It's the original home of this band, but they recorded this in Asheville, North Carolina, in a studio. I've seen some other artists recording them. Must be a really nice studio up in Asheville. Plus, beautiful mountains up there, so that may be why people go there to record. Okay, and that's the only new albums I have to show you. I got some records from Adam at the Record Crate, buying on YouTube. He's doing live showings on YouTube, and I picked up several. I like soundtracks mainly because of the nostalgia factor, and so I picked this one up. To Sir With Love soundtrack, featuring, of course, starring Sidney Poitier, and the music of, and also she plays in the movie Lulu, and she does the title track and some other tracks on here, and there's some instrumentals as well. So now I'm a teacher, or a retired teacher, and I think it's true in most professions. You don't really like movies about your profession. They tend to glorify certain aspects of it, They don't get a lot of the little things right and things like that. So, and who wants to go watch something about what you do every day, 5 days a week, right? Well, I don't like teacher movies. There's a lot of them out there. I don't really care for them. But this is the one teacher movie that I will watch and enjoy on Turner Classic Movies. Okay. I also like to collect Capricorn record label albums, and I like to collect albums from all the members of the Taylor family, James Taylor being, of course, the most well known. But you know, he had several brothers that also had major label and smaller label recordings, and a sister, Kate, I believe, Kate Taylor, I believe. Haven't found any of her music. I think she's got at least one album. But I think this gives me most, if not all, of Livingston Taylor's albums. This one's called Echo, or Echoes, which is Echoes, plural. And of course, there's that Capricorn label. And this is from 1979, so the last gasp of Capricorn records when this one came out. This is one of his later records on Capricorn. Was glad to pick that up from Adam. Also, of course, I think a lot of people, one of the favorites in record collectors and vinyl community and aficionados is one of those bands like some of the other artists that never, like, Nick Drake. Nobody ever bought any of his records when they came out. He became extremely popular, decades later. Big Star. Didn't sell any records, but they became very, very popular. Of course, out of Memphis, Tennessee, you have the precursor to Big Star, which is the Box Tops. And Alex Chilton was lead singer for the Box Tops. The latter being their big song, big hit, and Cry Like a Baby on Bell Records. I haven't looked this up, but I believe this is, an at the time issue. It may not be, first edition, but an at the time issue, not a reissue years later. And the liner notes are done by Mark Lindsay of Paul Revere Narrators. Pick this up for $5 from Adam. And also got this blues album. Let you take a look at that there. This is Chicago, the Living Legend, Southside Blues, featuring Mammy, Yancey, and Little Brother Montgomery. And it also has the Mississippi Sheiks on here, and which was lead vocals and guitar were Walter Benson, of course, and Henry Benson. So those four artists or bands are featured on here. And then I got some records from Discogs, trying to collect as much of the West Coast and Northeastern bluegrass from the 60s as I can get my hands on, or at least get a representation of all those acts. I've got the Hillman, I've got the Scottsville Squirrel Barkers, and I've got some Kentucky Colonels on CD. I didn't have any Kentucky Colonels on album, so I picked this up. This is a 1966 recording, and it's on Shiloh Records, the same label that posthumously released some Graham Parsons records and things, International Submarine Band and things like that. And this album from the Kentucky Colonels, of course, Clarence White, who would a couple years later go on and join the Byrds. Clarence White, Roland White, and Eric White making up the key ingredients to the Kentucky Colonels. And this was a recording. They went into the studio with the hopes of landing a record contract. So they made these recordings and shopped at the labels and didn't get any takers at that point. So it came out 12 years later, it's collector's edition. Collector's edition here. Shiloh was really good about finding those old tapes of people that would go on and become famous and put them out. All right. Also trying to get the early works of John Hartford. I've got all his stuff from Aeroplane forward on vinyl, but I don't have some of his RCA recordings prior to that. So I was able to pick this one up. I think this is 1970, if I'm not mistaken. I like nice written lyrics in here and things like that. Okay. And a really big club in my area back in the 70s and into the early 80s was a place called the Pier that brought in lots of national acts. It was in Raleigh at a place called the Village Underground or Village Subway, which were a collection of clubs under the parking lot of an old shopping center in Raleigh, North Carolina. And the Pier hosted a lot of great regional and national acts along with local acts. And the Frog in the Nightgown did the same with jazz. It was a jazz club. And then there were Cafe Deja Vu and be the main one, but there were one or two others in and out that were more geared toward local bands. Well, this is live at the Pier from the Bluegrass Experience. And this was a very popular bluegrass band when I was growing up and into my teens and beyond. They played a lot, and this is a recording they made at the Peterson. I was glad to I actually have a copy of that, but I got it for $1 or $2, so I went ahead and got another copy and see which copy plays better. County Records, the Mcpeak Brothers, and this is the three Mcpeak Brothers, Dewey, Larry, and Mike. But in addition, on this record, they have Jim Buchanan playing the fiddle, Ricky Skaggs on the mandolin, and Jerry Douglas on the dobro. And this is from around 1970. This is 1977 when this came out. An original King Records, I think, if I haven't looked it up yet, but I believe it is from the looks of it, not a reissue from Gusto. But here's Country Singing and Instrumentals from Reno and Smiley and the gang. 18 songs. Of course, Reno Smiley being very important band duo in the bluegrass genre. And a very, very good, well-regarded banjo player was Bill Emerson. This is Bill Emerson and his Virginia Mountaineers. This is an old record. I'd say this is 62 or 3, maybe maybe a little later because it's stereophonic, so maybe 65 on Coronet Records. I thought Coronet was a jazz label. I don't know, but picked that one up. And I've heard people talk about a band I wasn't familiar with until I started watching vinyl community videos, and I've heard several people. Headley, I believe, would be one, and Mazzy, and a few others, maybe. But I know those two talk about a British folk rock band called Heads, Hands, and Feet, which I think is an awful name for a band. This is Old Soldiers Never Die. I picked this up from a discog seller. And the only artist name on here from this band that I'm familiar with, but I'm sure others may be may have gone on to long and illustrious careers as too, is Albert Lee, who went on and has continued to play for so many great artists, including Emmylou Harris, recorded on lots and lots of albums out of Nashville and LA and places like that. Now, part of that LA bluegrass scene is Herb Peterson, who does a lot with Chris Hillman. I've got the feeling this may be an attempt to be a little more commercial. I haven't had a chance to play it yet. This is Sandman from Chris Hillman, and it's on Epic Records, and it's from 1977. One of the few bright spots in country music during that era when it got a lot too popish was the OK. the O'Kanes. And this is basically two songwriters. And it's Karen Kane and Jamie O'Hara, the O'Kanes. See, they're more traditional sound, less popish. So I saw that it was $1, and I threw it. And there was no extra charge for shipping. I threw it in the basket when I was ordering on Discogs. And here's I'm trying to wrap this up before it gets much longer. But here's the ones I'm really excited about. I got most of these records from Discogs from a very small seller. Somebody had 50 or 60 records, I think. But he had a lot of obviously bluegrass and folk stuff. Within his collection, he had acquired records from a library, and these are Folkways records. You see this one, and this is from like 1963 or so, 64, and this is Roger Sprung, not a old Mountaineer or anything like this. This is a guy who lived in New York. Taught a lot of the folk. He used to play the banjo. The album is called Progressive Bluegrass and Other Instrumentals, played by Roger Sprung, Sprung, on the banjo. But Doc Watson plays lead guitar on here. Joe Locker, second guitar. Willie Locker, mandolin. I don't know these people. Ollie Phillips on bass and Bob Thomas on drum. Oh, we got drums in there. Oh, that's almost sacrilegious. Okay, and it's on Folkways. Probably holding that up backwards. But I've got 3 of these, very good shape. And they come, these Folkways records, very simplistic covers. But they all come with little flyers, like hand typed, nothing expensive, nothing fancy. So, there's lots to learn from that. This is what separates CDs and streaming from vinyl, when you can get things like this. Okay. The next one, as I said, I was trying to collect the northeastern folk boom band guys that were playing bluegrass and old time music and things like that. Of course, this is the New Lost City Ramblers, which is John Cohen, Mike Seeger, who's half brother of Pete Seeger, and Tom Haley. It's Volume 5, Folkway Records. Very simplistic. Excuse me. And it too has what they did was, it isn't a gatefold, but they had a piece of cardboard between to divide it. So the record would go on one side, say on the front, and the piece of cardboard, and then a elaborate, though not fancy, little flyer with the lyrics and a little something about them on the other side. So I'm not sure why there was any need to separate the two, but I guess they had a reason, so I'm not going to question them. And finally, I've been trying to collect fiddlers conventions and festival recordings. And here is Folkways. It's edited by Mike Seeger and John Cohen, New Lost City Ramblers. The 37th Old Time Fiddlers Convention at Union Grove, North Carolina. Look at that. Oh, yeah. And I think the 37th, I think the first one was in 24. So, let's see, 24 and 37 is 60, 61 maybe, something like that. And once again, tells you about the Fiddlers Convention, who the artists were. And if I'm not mistaken, around this time, the New Lost City Ramblers came down and competed in the Fiddlers Convention as a band and won a time or two. They said, I think they were being modest, but they said they gave it to them because they had traveled so far, from all the way up from New York City down to Union Grove, North Carolina. They had traveled so far to compete, they just couldn't help but give them first prize. But I think they played really well too. Okay, so there's a look at some of my recent acquisitions, and it still ran more than 20 minutes. And Chester says, hey, y'all, I love you too, Chester. All right, I'll talk to y'all later. Remember, be kind to your neighbors because we're all neighbors.